This is the Morning Bugle on NCBN. And if you don't know, today is the World Environmental Day. Basically, we shine lights on the environment and all that it entails. Ayuba would take a brief of what this day really connotes and what we should be conscious of. But joining us to understand this conversation better today is Mr. Akachukwu Okafor, environment industry analyst, and he would help us discourse World Environment Day and what it truly entails. Hello, good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Ashisha.
All right.
All right.
Ayuba, do us the honors.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome to our guest. All right, today is the World Environment Day, and it's a day celebrated annually on the June 5th, and it's a day organized by the United Nations. Every 3 seconds we learn that the world loses enough forest to cover a football pitch, and over the last century we have and destroyed half of our and wetlands. Now, a whole lot of issues are at stake here. The World Environment Day now is focused in the ecosystem restoration, and its theme is re-imaging, recreate, restore. It's all about restoring the ecosystem. That's the focus for this year. Our guests, you are welcome to the program. First of all, let's get your thoughts on the World Environment Day. What does this day actually means to not just Nigerians but people all around the world?
Thank you, Ayuba. Yes, today is World Environment Day, and this day was agreed to be celebrated worldwide in Stockholm in 1972. And in 1974, the very first World Environment Day was celebrated by the United States. And the essence of the World Environment Day is to remind the world and inhabitants of the need to preserve our ecosystem, to make our world greener, to conserve biodiversity, to make sure that we'll keep the earth safe for us. But I would say, unfortunately, since 74 we started to celebrate this, it has been rhetoric than taking action, because you would remember or you acknowledge that the fight for the climate, which is literally to reverse the harm that we are causing to our climate, just started a decade ago. So we've done quite a bit in terms of movement to secure or make sure that we have clean water bodies. In the US, they've got the Clean Water Act. Elsewhere in the world, we have other programs. Of course, up here in Africa, we had the Great Green Wall. And there have been other initiatives to make sure that we do not harm our earth as we have been doing. So it's a day for everyone to be conscious of the environment and to make sure that we are in harmony with our environment.
All right, let's talk about it in the Nigerian context. Over the last 10 years, conversations surrounding protecting the world, protecting, our environments, protecting really the atmosphere for the next generation have taken center stage worldwide. But when you come home to Nigeria, do you think that we have attached that much seriousness to the conversation surrounding recycling, protecting water, not wasting water, not cutting down trees and the likes? Do you think we have domesticated this conversation as seriously as it should?
Unfortunately, unfortunately, we haven't really, because you still have development or infrastructure development or industrial development that happens without a basic environmental impact assessment carried on. And this is even on projects that government itself is involved. And in a situation where government is found to be culpable in not enforcing or complying to standards, environmental standards and regulations, then it's a problem. But let's leave government, because at the end of the day, populations are the ones that will live in the environment. We don't know how to take care of our trash. Most of the floods that we have witnessed, or impact of floods or heavy rains, due to drainages being blocked by sachet water and plastics and the polythenes and all that. And we haven't been able to create a system, a waste management system, to take care of this of that waste. But interestingly, the private sector, some entrepreneurs have risen to the challenge to create a value chain that will ensure that some of these waste are channeled to useful purpose. But then the major work has to do with government taking up initiatives, putting in resources, or providing the enabling environment to ensure that some of these initiatives are scaled up. When you go to Tanzania, I think last year, including Kenya, had banned use of polythene in the country. But then we haven't got a policy to take care of our plastics and all have you. And plastic is a very huge polluter. It takes close to 300 to 400 years to degrade. And these are very harmful, not just to the soil, but to the oceans and all of that. We need to do more, really.
All right. One of the regions that have suffered from this impact of environmental disasters, I would say, or damage, is the Niger Delta region because of the oil spill and the oil activity going on there. We had the Ogoni issue, for instance, that has lingered for years. We've heard about the cleanup, the cleanup of the Ogoni land, and that project has been on for years. What's your assessment of that project, and where are we at the moment?
Well, the Ogoni cleanup, thanks to UNEP for helping get government to speed to start off that project. But then it's quite difficult to really assess the work so far, because we would remember that during the procurement process for that project, some companies that were awarded contracts are said to be companies that haven't got the technical capacity or the experience to actually do the cleanup as it were. There has been some level of work done, but I'm not in a position to really assess the entire work. But persons like what's his name now? The vocal environmentalist in Bessie, in the Niger Delta, had called on government to actually look back and see how it can get the work done, because according to stakeholders on the ground, particularly the civil society, to their opinion, nothing is happening. The cleanup is not happening.
Okay, if I may just, continue from that line of question, questioning. Now, there is a general thought among certain quarters that industrialization appeared to be the biggest threat to, having a healthy environment. But then again, as the world continues to become global and we are trying to, have good relationship, international trade will continue to take center stage. We're trying to make our economy better, so we need industries to continue to sprout up. Do you think that this is going to continuously pose as a problem? And if at all you think so, how can we create a balance? Because we do need our world to continue to thrive and continue to grow. But also we need to stay alive and have a world to protect and deliver to the next generation. So how can we find a good balance in doing two things that are very paramount for human living?
Thank you. Unfortunately, it's quite difficult to create that balance. But at the same time, we've got technology that have been proven to be efficient in waste management. Or there are chemicals, as we know them, that are banned, and there are alternatives as well. Sometime in 2017, I was in the United States, in the Penobscot Indian Nation region, and they were protesting against industries coming to their restoration region to build industries. And the government of Maine had always been in the courts with them. And the Indian Nation people had always won the cases because the history of pollution, environmental pollution in the New England area was what made it expedient for the U.S. Congress to pass the Clean Water Act. And these companies were going to come back to start polluting again. To answer your question, really, there are technologies that would help with ensuring that we have this balance. But the challenge is that these technologies are expensive, and not many companies are ready to deploy these technologies. Unfortunately, companies, as it has been proven by research or history, has told us that companies, international companies, move to jurisdictions where environmental regulation is lax so that they are able to pollute. I think what will make it possible for less pollution to happen, particularly in weak regulatory environment or countries, would be for the world to come together, the United Nations, the UN Global Compact stakeholders, to make a demand on international companies to ensure that what they do in country X, or maybe in the United States or in Europe, is what they do in company Y, maybe in the global south. And this is where I think social media and empowering local communities come to play, to call out these companies when they find them to be polluting and not balancing or creating that balance. And our governments also should understand that they have a duty to protect the citizens and to protect the environment. Because when these negotiations for investment do take place, some of those things are discussed. How are you able to take care of the environment, keep it safe and all that? But governments, most times, in a bid to get this investment coming, they don't take strong positions on how the environment should be protected. I think government has a huge role to play in this, because at the end of the day, when these companies leave, it's their citizens. It goes back to creating a weak social system where you can't even have the jobs again for the youth. You have crime crisis, health crisis, and all of that. When we look at possibly pollution disasters that we have, be it in Zamfara or Shakira, or we know about the Flint situation in Michigan. So these things come back to hurt the nation. So I think it's a work that host communities should take on, the government should take on, and the companies as corporate entities should also look at that as their responsibility.
All right. So, Akachukwu, there's a whole lot of conversation now about, the agricultural sector, and to be specific, the cattle rearing, sector, where we are talking about open grazing or not. There's a whole debate about that, and the government is actually considering, ending open grazing, and we are talking about ranching now. But then there are concerns about the climate, concerns about whether or not that's a sustainable practice, looking at the changes in climate, in certain parts of the country. Can you just draw out the nexus for us here? How sustainable is it if we are to adopt the ranching program? Are we going to have any sort of challenge at all in the process?
Well, thank you. The discussion on ranching or open grazing is a very absolute discussion that we should be having as a nation at this stage of development. We shouldn't be arguing for ranching or grazing, but unfortunately, that is the situation that we found ourselves as a nation. We should be talking about better ways of improving livelihoods and well-being of our citizens. But to answer, many nations have practiced ranching. When we go to the Latin America, there is a system that is called the silvopastoral system of growing livestock and trees at the same time. These are not rocket science. They have practiced these over the years. And ranching, as we know it, when you go to the U.S., you see how ranching is done. Latin America as well. So when it comes to the climate that we have here, we have scientists that can tell us, okay, this is the best way we can design our own system if we can't adopt what is in use in Latin America or in the U.S. I mean, this is not a thought that we should be entertaining. I mean, there are solutions to this. We have climatology, we have soil scientists, we have meteorologists that could design any system that we want to have put in place. But I don't want to have those discussions. We maybe want to just do open grazing, which in this day and age, it doesn't enable any form of development in terms of when you look at it with other needs of the society for agriculture, for movement of people and what have you. I mean, the science is clear. There is no problem with the science of ranching or other forms of growing animal husbandry with tree or what you have as agroecology and all of that. Those are proven elsewhere, and we can design our own unique systems here. So the science is not the problem, or the climate is not the problem. The problem is the political will for us to decide on what we want.
Okay. All right. Akachukwu Okafor, founder and lead consultant, Change Partners. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on the Morning Bugle to discuss these issues. We hope that you oblige. Next time we invite you.
Thank you, Ayuba. Yeah. Thank you.
Great.
All right. Thank you very much for joining in once again. That was a very insightful conversation, and of course, it draws our attention to the need for us to continuously protect our environment. And, It's World Environment Day every day. Even though officially it's on the 5th of June, the celebrations, the conversations have started, from 2 days back. Yesterday, we saw a lot of videos and basically people just shining light on that conversation on social media. And I'm sure tomorrow we'll see even more grand celebration of the world that we live in. But even more importantly, it's all of the wrong things that we do to Mother Nature and the universe. We can only protect the climate when we are conscious of the little tiny ways that we contribute to its destruction or hard destruction. Because the universe is a she, I heard.
Well, it's a she. I give it up.
It's Mother Universe, Mother Earth.
I always hear that,
Giving birth to all these beautiful things.
On that angle, yes, the earth is reproductive, and we shouldn't be the ones damaging our environment. We shouldn't be the ones doing the things that harm our environment in a way that it will not operate in the way God has designed the earth to operate. Because the consequences are that if we, by virtue of our industrialization and things that we do to the environment, eventually certain things will just begin to be disrupted. Just like we are seeing in some instances the raining circle, for instance. Sometimes you just find that it's not really going the way it should. You find that in a month where you are expecting the rainy season to begin, it doesn't start.
Yeah.
And then maybe much later it starts, and then it ends up even much shorter, than usual. So these are impacts of, the issue about environment that we are talking about. And the earlier we realize that, the better for us, so that we can appreciate nature more and let the earth go green.
Absolutely, and it starts with having a recycling bin, making sure that you're not blocking all the drainage and sewage waste, which we tend to do as a people in this country. You would notice it with most of our public sewages and drainage systems, and that's why we have, when the rain come in, we have the kind of destructions that we see. Erosion is also a problem because unfortunately we do not go to the right people to ensure that we're building in the right places. That's why we have all of these agencies put in place. Make sure that you have a professional help you out when you want to build a house. It's one thing to build a house, but is it okay? Is it sustainable? Is it even safe for you as a person? And then look at the bigger picture. Are you destroying the earth for the rest of us?
Yeah, and also those who are engaged in oil bunkering, for instance. These are things that will have, impacts on the environment, because by the time it spills, you no longer have control. You cannot really manage the extent of damage that is going to cause. You're
polluting the water, you're causing farmlands to be unproductive, and you're really just stopping normal life flow. Yeah, because don't forget, one of the biggest problems of the Niger Delta is that their land is no longer fertile. They no longer have clean water to drink. Imagine you destroying, water for people to drink. Imagine you destroying the sources of people's livelihood. Farmers can no longer go to the farm. Fishermen can no longer go about their businesses. And to make it even worse, we no longer have beautiful greenery and lands to live for the next generation. We must think about it from a place of responsibility, that the lands that we met, the greenery that we met, the history that we have, the imaginations that we beautifully have from, our growing up, we need to give it back to the next people coming in. Imagine a world where people no longer know what a farmland looks like.
I mean, we are talking about employment, for instance. How do you employ people when one aspect of the economy that is supposed to generate employment, because take a look at it, if the rivers are polluted, people cannot fish. Before now we know fishing is an occupation,
a major one
that has a very strong historical background. Now we wake up to a generation where people cannot fish. We wake up to a generation where people cannot farm. They cannot farm the land. I mean, that's one of the oldest occupations in the world. All right, people cannot farm. So these are things that create job opportunities. And don't look at it for the angle of just farming. There's a whole chain attached to that.
Absolutely.
From that farmer, you have someone who now has a job to transport those farm implements to the market. You have people who are there, they are business people, they buy and they sell to others. These are chains all attached to one, and all of that now has been disrupted because people can no longer farm, because the lands are bad and all that. So these are things that we should, take into consideration every now and then as we talk about the environment and we talk about sustainability.